Before we get into the show, guys, remember, guys, this show posts each and every single Sunday, so if you like this content, please go check out the channel, support the channel. This week's episode, we did do the fan Q&A. You guys came through. If you guys want to participate in the fan Q&A, all you got to do is go to the channel and ask questions if you want to participate in the Dolphins community. So if you guys like the idea of that, you can get your questions answered on the show each and every single Sunday. And you guys came through hard this week. You guys asked over 50 questions, which is awesome. And we'll get into those questions after we get through the news. This first news story comes from ESPN.com. This is super sad if you're a longtime Dolphins fan. Vikings O-line coach and former Dolphins head coach Tony Sparano has passed away. The Minnesota Vikings offensive line coach Tony Sparano has died unexpectedly at the age of 56, the team announced Sunday afternoon. Sparano had complained about chest pains and went to the hospital Thursday, a source told ESPN. Sparano underwent tests and was released Friday. The source said Sparano's wife found him unconscious Sunday morning as they prepared to leave for church, but could not revive him. So, deeply saddened by this news are my thoughts and prayers, and I think the entire Dolphins community thoughts and prayers go out to the Sparano family. Hopefully they can get through this, because anybody who has went through anything like this knows the toll it takes on a family. So hopefully they can get through this together. Alright, so this next news story, obviously super sad. Only head coach to lead us to a division title in the last, 20 years? So it's very sad. This next news story comes from Pro Football Talk. Danny Amendola says Gase is one of the guys Bill Belichick is like a principal. Danny Amendola left the Patriots for the Dolphins in free agency this offseason, and he's already feeling the differences in coaching style. Amendola told the Comeback podcast that playing for Dolphins coach Adam Gase is like playing for a friend, while playing for Coach Bill Belichick is playing for the boss. Danny said, quote, Coach Gase is one of the guys, one of the boys, and you want to fight hard for your boys. Back in New England, it's almost like you have a principal, the principal's office, and stuff like that, Amendola said. Amendola wasn't ripping Belichick, whom he also called the greatest coach of all time, but he was saying that as a veteran player, he now appreciates having a coach who treats him more like an equal. This news is interesting. Anybody who's been a Dolphins fan forever, since Belichick started or Brady started, knows you don't really want to fuel the fire. You don't want to give them an extra reason to beat your team, other than the fact, you don't want them to show up wanting to beat you up. You know what I'm saying? Give them that extra motivation. This is one of those situations where I'm like, can you just shut your mouth, a little bit? I just don't want to start. God knows Brady doesn't need extra chips on his shoulder. The man's a psychopath when it comes to that. He still holds on to the fact that he was drafted in the 6th round, which is not that big of a deal. If you got drafted to the NFL, you should be blessed, for God's sakes. I don't care what round you're drafted in. I mean, it's a super high honor just to get drafted, for God's sake. So the man still holds on to that, and obviously he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Probably the greatest competitor other than Michael Jordan in sports history. So, I just don't want the fuel, to add more fuel onto the fire. That's all I'm saying. This has happened before in the past with, former Patriots players going to the Jets and stuff like that. It just, Wes Welker with the Broncos, he started talking, some smack there too, and we all know how that ended up. So, I just don't like adding fuel onto the fire. But it is an interesting. I mean, obviously, dude. Obviously, there are different coaching styles, but I think both equally work. And obviously, Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, in my opinion. Obviously, he still doesn't have more wins than Shula, and I don't think he'll ever break that record. But Shula went to 5 Super Bowls. Bill has went to 8 with New England, not counting him at his coordinator years with New York, and sadly Shula has a losing record. Actually, Shula went to 6 Super Bowls. He went with 1 with the Colts, and then obviously 5 with us. So, and obviously only won 2 of those. So it is what it is. I mean, Bill's one of the greatest of all time, or the greatest of all time. Probably the greatest coach in any sport, to be honest with you, in sports history. So, just a crazy good coach. I just feel like, let's just not give them another reason to, beat us. This next news story comes from Bleacher Report. The Miami Dolphins, is Ryan Tannehill back and better? So, excuse me, I read this title of this article completely wrong. What questions do the Dolphins have to answer during training camp? So, training camp questions the Dolphins have to answer. This comes from Bleacher Report. Miami Dolphins, the question that we have to answer, is Ryan Tannehill back and better than before? Now, this is a Bleacher Report article, so take this with a grain of salt. The Miami Dolphins will be getting quarterback Ryan Tannehill back after a season loss to a torn ACL. That has brought some positivity to the offense. This quote comes from Adam Gase. He says, quote, "You could tell he has a total grip of the offense. Everything just moves smoother. He's just more experienced, whether it's in the offense or just football in general." There are two questions that need to be answered. Is Tannehill 100%? Can he be even better than he was before the injury? Tannehill has an intriguing skill set, but he has never been more than an average starter. He is 37. This is from the article. He is 37-40 as a starter, but at the end of camp, the Dolphins need to know what to expect from him. Tannehill, whether this should be his last season in Miami. This is obvious, and this is the biggest question the Dolphins have to answer, not just for training camp, but obviously for the season as well. I mean, this is huge, and I think Dolphins fans need to be more optimistic about this. I mean, he's coming back. He was a beast when he finally got the groove of the offense and the scheme. Total beast. We would have had probably one of the more talented offenses last year. If not, I guarantee you guys we would have been a top 10 offense last year with Tannehill at quarterback. Even though our offensive line struggled at times mightily due to injuries and other things, we still shot ourselves in the foot in a lot of games. When you think about so many games that season, I mean, even the Buccaneers game is probably the best. Both of the Bills games, those are both great examples of just bad offensive play that just loses the game for your football team. So it's just great to have him back. He is our franchise quarterback. I don't know if you guys have been watching Mic'd Up lately. Thank God they've been doing something for us, because obviously the season is still pretty far away. It's good that they're uploading content to kind of hold us over, but if you guys have been watching the Mic'd Up, Tannehill's Mic'd Up was amazing. I mean, I think he's only done one other Mic'd Up video, and it really just gives you an insight into how Tannehill is around the guys, how he leads, how he acts around them, and it's so fun. And I think if you think Tannehill isn't a good leader, just because of his demeanor and his body language, watch that video. Just watch that video. You can tell he's one of the guys. Just a lot of great moments with Devontae and Kenyon. So everything to me looks to be on the upside, and I cannot wait. It is clear his teammates love him. I mean, Kenyon Drake said it best when he was talking about, "I'm so happy to have him back," and I think you can tell the entire football team. It really doesn't matter if the fans. The team is what matters most, and the team is excited to have him back, and you can see the excitement in those videos, and just with interviews with the players and stuff, and even the local media. When you talk about the Palm Beach Post, the Sun Sentinel, some of the reporters there, they see what Tannehill has become, and have been giving him a lot of credit for that. So it's all pointing to a good season, and I'm super excited about it. And I cannot wait to see number 17 step up onto the field, especially in these new uniforms. People are forgetting, sleeping on these new unis. Can't wait. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Top pick Minkah Fitzpatrick begins working on, quote, great legacy with the Miami Dolphins. I guess that's really all we have of this story. And I just wanted to bring this up, even though that's basically just a title of an article. I really do believe Minkah is going to be special, and I really do believe that. And I cannot wait to see him play in preseason, especially because I want to see him dominate lower competition, depending on how many snaps he takes. We're not going to overdo it. And again, I hope Matt Burke doesn't mess this up. The only thing standing between Minkah and a really good season is coaching, in my opinion. I mean, the kid is just special. We just have to play him at free safety solely especially for a young player. Lining him up in so many different positions as a DB. Minkah is special, so I think he will still produce at a relatively high level for a rookie. But to really unlock his potential, I really, really, really wish that he was only a free safety. And I don't really want him to be a Tyrann Mathieu lining up everywhere. If somebody gets hurt, okay, If Bobby got hurt, then fine, put him in the slot if we need to. If a corner on the outside got hurt, put him on the outside if we need to. But in terms of a base defense, I really, really, really want him to line up at free safety. In my opinion, I feel that is the best position for him. I just hope to God Matt does not mess that up. This next news story is an interesting one, and it kind of blew me away a little bit when I heard it. This comes from Fansided. Dolphins anthem policy is doomed from the start. Let's see here. If you're trying to take attention away from something, pouring gasoline on it while waving a crowd of people is a bad idea. Enter the Miami Dolphins. Earlier this offseason, the NFL indicated initiated its national anthem policy, which is in essence tells players to either stay in the locker room during the song or stand at attention on the sidelines. Anything else is going to be resulted in a fine. The Dolphins apparently, feeling Commissioner Roger Goodell didn't go far enough. After seeing the policy, any player who protests on the sideline will not be subjected to a fine, but a 4-game suspension. So this was interesting. I'm not going to get political here. There's no reason for it, and I don't want to do that. But I will say this: it's interesting because I really felt like, especially how we handled it last year, talking to Stephen Ross about how he believes the players can, do whatever they feel, protest, and he didn't mind it. I mean, he basically said that he doesn't really care. So it's just weird hearing this, and I guess Adam Gase sees it as a distraction, but to make our own policy on it and be like, hey, yeah, if you do this, it's a 4-game suspension, I think is a little crazy. Especially we have a lot of outspoken players we're used to. Michael Thomas is now gone. Arian Foster is now gone. But we still have Kenny Stills, who's obviously very outspoken in his views. So it's just weird. I wouldn't have said, out of all the organizations, to go to that extreme. I really wouldn't have thought it would have been us. Really, really wouldn't have thought it would have been us. And even Adam Gase, he really hasn't said anything about it, but it really seemed to me like he really didn't mind it as much as, other people obviously felt about the situation. So I just thought it was interesting that we went to that extreme. Very, 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 very weird, in my opinion. Palm Beach Post, and again, that's not my opinion. I just thought the way we handled it was like, whoa, I didn't think that's how, that's what we, as an organization, thought, or the Dolphins thought. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Miami Dolphins can't afford to waste Rashad Jones' good years. Let's see here. To anyone who has watched Jones, it's obvious he has been one of the Dolphins' best draft picks in recent years, steadily improving his physical style until reaching Pro Bowl status. So now maybe the question shouldn't be more Rashad Jones can give the Dolphins, but what they can give him. Believe it or not, after 110 games and 664 tackles, Jones has never appeared in a playoff game. The one season the Dolphins reached the playoffs since he arrived in 2016 was when he missed all but 6 games because of a rotator cuff injury. That is a great point, and again, people forget how injured that 2016 roster was and how good of a coaching job we did. We beat a lot of teams that had a lot more talent on it than us, and Tannehill was a huge part of that. I mean, some of the performances that he had late in the season were tremendous. We beat a lot of good football teams to get to the playoffs, and it's a testament to Adam Gase, but yeah, Rashad obviously, sadly, even Tannehill, really. I mean, if there were any 3 Dolphins, if there's 3 Dolphins on this roster that deserved it the most, it was Cameron Wake, Tannehill, and Jones, in my opinion. Not even Mike Pouncey or any of those guys, because the sacrifice that okay, I'll add Mike Pouncey in there. But the sacrifice that, the stuff that they all went through, all the trash with Joe Philbin and, everything that those guys have went through with the up and down seasons, with the revolving, especially with Mike Pouncey and Cameron Wake, with the revolving door at quarterback before Tannehill got there, just the stability being all over the place, they all deserved to play on that playoff game healthy. And it's a dang shame that they couldn't, it couldn't happen that way. Because they all deserved that playoff game. They all earned it and they deserved it. And it's a dang shame they couldn't get there. But, this team this year, I think, and I'm not putting the blame on anybody, but Rashad needs to do a better job. And again, he's not a free safety; he's a strong safety. Hopefully, we smarten up and put Minka back there. But Rashad is not a good communicator. We had way too many busted coverages in his entire career here, really. If you think about it, we've had a lot of busted coverages, and I'm not saying it's all his fault, but the continuity in the play we need a leader on that defense, and Rashad's been there for a long time. And I don't really think he's like the vocal leader that we need, and hopefully either Raekwon or Minka becomes that. Even though they're super young players, I feel like we still need that, and hopefully those two can do that for us. But yeah, I think we can give. I think we're gonna give it to him. For sure. If not this year, then definitely next year. This year, we're going to be a very good competitive team. I can tell you that. And I've said in the past, if we don't make the playoffs, we're going to lose a lot of close games. And that's just my opinion. If we don't make it, we'll lose a lot of close games. But this team will be very, very, very competitive in 2016. Next news story comes from the Splash Zone. The Dolphins look to exceed expectations. The national media is making the Miami Dolphins sound like the second coming of the Cleveland Browns. They lost Jarvis Landry and Ndamukong Suh. No way they win 3 games. Oh my god, dude. Okay. I wish I was there in some of these I really, really do. It's, to me, that's the most ignorant. If you don't think we can't win 3 games, I mean, come on, dude. Mostly everyone believes the Dolphins are not going to win a lot of games this year or in the foreseeable future. The team heading into the season has way more talent than the 2016 team that made it to the playoffs. I just don't see the team being so bad as everyone is making them out to be. First of all, again, I'm going to say this one time, and I'm not even going to, dude, I could sit here and talk about this forever, but I will sit here and say it again. Most of these people are ignorant. Everybody, every year, they're like, couldn't have seen this team be good, couldn't have seen that, this team is the surprise of the year, because people don't pay attention, dude. They do not pay attention. If you are a football junkie, if this is your number one sport, if this is your favorite sport, if this is the sport you constantly follow, I feel like you get a pretty good feel of what teams have a chance to improve this season from a year ago. Whether that be people coming back from injuries, new coaching staffs that are talented, whatever it may be, you can always get a sense of, okay, that team's on the uprise, that team's on the uprise. It really doesn't ever, I'm not saying things don't surprise you, because they do. Obviously, it's football. It's the most unpredictable thing ever. But you always get a good feel of that, and I feel like, especially ESPN's cover, if you guys subscribe to ESPN's, and again, I'm going off on a tiff here. I'm going to end this as quickly as possible. I apologize. But if you subscribe to their channel, it's all NBA. It literally is all NBA. And the NBA, to be honest with you guys, it's coming for the NFL, and it's coming fast. I feel like the younger generation, I think that's their sport. As opposed to last generation, which was I guess football, and it has been for a while now. But I'm going down 3 different roads right now. The point is, most of these people I feel are ignorant and really don't. Some of them aren't. I'm not saying all analysts are. But and again, that could be just your opinion. You just look at their roster and think no. But again, I feel like a lot of people in the national media are ignorant to certain teams because they don't cover them. They don't watch tape like we do. And when I say tape, I'm not talking about coaches' film. I'm talking about, you guys have probably rewatched the same game a million times, just like I have. I've rewatched the same games a million times this offseason because I have no football. That's all I do. And other people don't do that, and you don't see, you don't study when we signed Albert Wilson, I'm sure all of you guys went to go watch Albert Wilson, anything, highlights, whatever it is, you guys went to go do that. They don't do that. They just look at the roster and think, oh, well, whatever. It's just a different thing. We are just more knowledgeable about this particular team than most people are, and I feel like that's why people are like, to say that we can't win 3 games is ridiculous. To say that this roster is equal or worse than the Cleveland Browns of the last 2 years is just ignorant, in my opinion. I mean, that's just my opinion. If anybody wants to, make that argument, fine. But I just really don't think you can. I really don't think you can. I don't think Ryan Tannehill is on the same level of Deshaun Kaiser, Chris Hogan, and some of the other bad quarterbacks that have went through there over the last 2 years. And that's just to start with, for God's sakes. No offense to Hugh Jackson, but I think Adam Gase is a better coach. So it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm not going to get into the roster debate, but I think that's why you see that in the national media. They're just not as well versed as hardcore fans are. Most of the fans that watch this channel are hardcore fans. They're not fair weather fans. They're especially not fair weather fans, but they're not casual fans is the word I'm looking for. So I think that's why. I think it mostly is ignorance. And I know when I went on like a 50, that people are going to be upset. I apologize. I went down 3-4 different roads right there. Okay, I needed to stay down the one road. Alright? Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it for that particular one. I was all over the place. Let's see here. Ooh, is this some... Alright, hang on. We gotta move on from this story because we just did that one. Excuse me. Alright, this next news story comes from the Fan Cited, which is a weird name. The Miami Dolphins are building the Dolphins like Adam Gase did the Broncos. I thought this was a fascinating article. The obvious link is head coach Adam Gase, but the Miami Dolphins are looking more and more like the Broncos, teams he was a part of in Denver. And this is a great article because it makes a lot of sense. There is something going on with the Miami Dolphins that people aren't really talking about. The casual fan is enamored by names and splash moves, hence the media. That sums it up better than I could ever, right there. They're enamored by big names and splash moves, national media. They equate that with winning and being successful in the offseason. However, the Dolphins have fallen victim to this time and time again in the past. The truly successful teams add parts that fit what they are trying to do and patch holes with proven veterans with no longer command a massive contract. We saw Denver do this with guys like DeMarcus Ware, and the Dolphins did this with Josh Sinton. The similarities to Gase's Broncos and Dolphins are becoming glaring. It's more clear on defense, but we'll start to see it on offense. His line in Miami now is looking a lot more like his line in Denver, and what will show up in a major way when you watch the rushing attack. He's also placing talented backs that are well-rounded, most importantly, can catch the passes behind the line. The receivers are set up to exhaust defenses with a dink-and-dunk attack with players that can take the top off of a defense after pulling in the safeties and lulling them to sleep with short passes and runs. Rookie tight end Mike Gesicki will immediately step in to the Julius Thomas role as an athletic seam threat and big-time option in the red zone. Don't ever say Julius Thomas's name with Mike Gesicki's. It's going to make me upset. Just like in Denver, Ryan Tannehill won't be asked to do a lot, which was exactly how the Broncos won. It sounds strange to say, but every metric the Peyton Manning that won in it. Well, see, he wasn't a part of that team when Peyton Manning won in Denver. Gary Kubiak and those boys were a part of that team. He was in Chicago at the time. Ring in Denver was the worst starting quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. We will watch Kenny Drake and Albert Wilson become household names this season, and Dolphins will win football games by limiting mistakes on offense and picking teams apart with short passes. The defense is clearly built like this is what I wanted to get to, because this is the way when the article is how Adam Gase is building it like Denver. This is a perfect example of that. The defense is clearly being built like Denver's vaunted, quote, no-fly zone. Xavier Howard is their top corner, and they have a handful of players that will have an opportunity to be a strong number two opposite of him. I believe it will be Tony Lippett. Bobby McCain has been extended to be the stopper in the slot teams desperately need in today's NFL. Behind the defense, Miami has two proven Pro Bowl caliber safeties and Rashad Jones and TJ McDonald, in addition to first-round pick Minkah Fitzpatrick, who may be the best of the three. One of the key pieces to the Broncos' defense was Brandon Marshall, who was burdened with the task of covering elite pass-catching backs and tight ends. We have seen Miami add Jerome Baker for the same job, and potentially even McDonald could be moved from his safety position. Raekwon McMillan will be the run stopper up the middle, and as of now, Kiko Alonso should be much better this season when not being asked to do things he simply can't do. It's a make-or-break year for him. The defensive line is stocked with pass rushers and versatile weapons that can play all over the line and rotate in and out. That actually reminds me more of Seattle Seahawks inside, but outside Cameron Wake will play the still talented veteran role who makes key plays with Charles Harris stepping in as the young up-and-comer. Andre Branch, Robert Quinn, and William Hayes will also be in the mix. The key cog the Dolphins are still missing is the Von Miller role, the stand-up pass. Well, we don't run a 3-4. The stand-up pass rushing disruptor who can ruin a game. Quinn may fill that role, and we seen him be great with the Rams, with that said, I'm not willing to bet we see them draft that guy in the first round next season, assuming they aren't in the market for a quarterback. Super fascinating, and really where I draw the comparisons to is how we've built the secondary. I'm not saying that we're going to be the Broncos, but again, we're building it like Denver built it, especially on the defensive side of the football. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And when you look back at the 2013 team when they broke all the records with the offense, obviously did they have Emmanuel Sanders yet? Can somebody tell me down? I don't think they had Emmanuel yet, but I know they had Wes. And again, I think the Wes Welker role will be filled with Danny Amendola, and Wes caught 12 touchdowns in that offense. So if Danny can still, and Wes I think was older than Danny at that point in his career when he caught 12 touchdowns. So I don't think it's gonna, unless Danny gets hurt. On the whole, I pray he doesn't. I think he can do the same thing that Wes did in that offense. And then when you look at who's our big X like Demaryius Thomas, we're hoping DP can be that, and I think he can be. And when you look at the tight end, obviously Julius Thomas, we have Mike Gesicki. And I think our running backs are way better than what he had in Denver. No, Sean Moreno had a fabulous season with them in 2013, but I think Kenyon, Frank, and Kalen are just better as a group than what they had in Denver. So yeah, I mean, it is super similar, and which is interesting to see. Like, hey man, I see what you're doing over there, and just how we invested in our secondary over these few years, and how we've invested in our line, and obviously we're starting to get smart and invest in our offensive line, and invest in helping Tannehill out with the running back additions and stuff like that, and the tight ends. But yeah, the defense is where it's most similar in my opinion. I mean, clearly there's some influence there. And again, the stand-up pass rusher thing, we run a wide 9-4-3. We don't run a 3-4, so that's not something that we're gonna do, which is fine. And in terms of the linebacker role, Brandon Marshall, I could be wrong about that, but when I watch him, he's never like he's not the fastest guy in the world, and he's not a good cover linebacker in my opinion. And I can't remember how good he was in when that defense was that dominant, but can't really speak to that. But every time I watch Brandon Marshall, it's not super impressive. So I think Raekwon could be that guy. When I watch Brandon Marshall, I think the best thing he does is in the trenches. So that is what it is. But anyway, moving on. Just a very fascinating article. Very fascinating. This next news story comes from the Sun Sentinel. Countdown to camp. Will Dolphins' first-round pick take their games to the next level? This comes from Omar Kelly. Laramie Tunsil, the Dolphins' 2016 first-round pick, struggled in his first year playing left tackle, leading the team in penalties. Again, it was his first year at tackle. Devontae Parker, the 2015 first-rounder, hasn't lived up to his talent level because of the injuries the past 3 seasons. And Juwan James' lack of consistency despite the 2014 first-round pick being a 4-year starter at right tackle is worrisome. And then obviously Charles Harris is somewhere but it's, man, Juwan's fine in my opinion. I don't think we're going to worry about Juwan. Devontae is such a I've talked about him so much, and you guys know already. I mean, we know already. We get it. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore, but it's like I don't know what else to say. I can't predict what's going to happen. I really can't. I cannot predict what Devontae Parker is going to do. And Laramie Tunsil, I really do feel like in his second year with the veteran presence of Josh and him talking about the relationship they've already built and how he's already taught him a few things, I think is going to benefit him. And again, who has he really had to learn from? You know what I'm saying? Over these few years, Jawan. We haven't had a lot of, and I guess BA. But they had a great relationship when he was there. But other than that, he really hasn't had. Especially last year, he didn't have any veteran leadership on that offensive line. So I think that's going to really help him this upcoming season as well. So, and this is the best offensive line in terms of I think these guys can actually stay healthy, unlike the Unicorns. So I think the offense, Laramie and Juwan, I'm not worried about as much as I am about DP. We'll see. And then obviously Charles Harris, I really do feel like he's going to have somewhere between 5 to 8 sacks, but I think he will have a ton of pressures. He might not get there. He might not get the sacks as much, but I do think he will get a ton of pressures. And who knows? He might get more snaps than I think he will. But if he gets the snaps I think he's gonna get, we'll see. But I think 8 sacks is his ceiling. I think his floor is 5, and somewhere in very very high in pressures. I'm hoping he can be like a Brandon Graham for us this season. Just get a ton of disruptions and help us out as much as possible. I think that's it for news, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're gonna have to switch to fan Q&A, which is great. And again, I really do appreciate this, for sure. I really appreciate you guys coming through. We might not be able to get to every question, which sucks. But don't be hey, just keep coming with them for next week's episode. And remember, if you guys made it 30 minutes in, you guys are homies. You've probably listened to this podcast a lot. Please go support the channel. It means a lot. Spread the news of this podcast. It means a ton, so we can continue to grow. Maybe get some guests on here as we move on up the ladder. And just continue to expand the channel, or expand the show, so that way we can make it a better show for you guys. And I would love that, to get guests and whoever that may be. But the farther we grow, the better the videos will get. This first question comes from Joe McIntyre. He says, with the addition of cover 3 and other single high safety looks, teams are adapting to play nickel and dime based packages, and the easiest way to exploit these defenses is with a power run game. As the size of the linebackers has given up for speed, with the lack of a real quality blocker in the fullback position, and with us only running zone runs with Drake, it leaves a heavy burden on Gore to carry the running game against teams this kind of defense. Do you think we'll bring in another back to come in for Gore and kind of a role? Do you think Balaj will be good enough to stand in? Do you think another fullback will be brought in to allow us to use the power run game more effectively? Love the show, and all the best for the future. I appreciate that, Joe. So the cover 3 thing kind of threw me off there, so we're going to focus on the dime package, because cover 3, I mean, it's kind of tough to run, because the safety's the safety's in the box in a cover 3 most of the time, because like you just said, it was a single high safety look, so it's a tougher look to run. But I see what you're saying, with everybody going soft in this passing era that we live in, with all these extra corner on the field and stuff of that nature. With like you said, the diamond nickel packages, power running schemes do work, and we've seen that even with the Eagles last year. They were multifaceted, they were multidimensional with their running game, and that really helped them get to the Super Bowl. And the Patriots, that's how people forget. Their power running game is one of the biggest reasons, and their offensive line are one of the bigger reasons they've been so dominant. Not just because of Brady in that offense, it's that the presence of that running game. So I could agree more. I think we do need a power running game presence. I would like us to have an I formation, thrown in there, especially with Frank Gore in there at times. It would be nice, and especially with Frank has obviously thrived in that kind of that kind of a running scheme in San Fran. I mean, that's all they did was I formation with Harbaugh there. So yeah, I agree with you. Do I think that they're going to do that? Probably not. I don't think you're going to see that with this offense. I think you're going to see a lot of shotgun runs, some pistol. I don't think you're going to see any power running at all. Maybe you will. I hope. I probably. I don't think it's completely ruled out, but I wouldn't hang your hat on it, is what I'm saying. But I do agree. It does help out, and like I just pointed out, all of those teams that have a ton of success with that, and to have that multifaceted running game, you also have to have multi-talented running backs. So maybe it is in the plans. I hope it is, because I think all 3 of those guys could do it. I do think Kenion's, people forget how big Kenyon is, and he got jacked this offseason. Jacked. So I think he could do it as well. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, the NFL is a league of matchups, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this. I think with the additions Miami has made and the losses the Patriots saw, I think Miami has potentially huge advantages. Quinn versus rookie tackle, Wake against Cannon, Miami's slot receivers versus secondary minus Butler, Drake Balaj, and especially Gesicki versus any Patriots linebacker. Your thoughts? Absolutely. Okay, so the question is, the NFL's league of okay, so the question really pertains to the Patriots, and I want to focus there. You're absolutely right. The Patriots' defense was not good last year. It was actually pretty bad. I feel like it really didn't improve that much at all. They tried to get Michael Bennett. That failed. they tried to do a lot of things that did not end up working out for them in their favor. I do feel like that defense is slow, and you know, they still have quality players on it, like Trey Flowers. They have Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore. They're still pretty, you know, they're still Harmon. They're still good players on it, but they're not an elite defense. So, like they have been in the past, you know, but before they had Logan Ryan, who was a really good corner. I feel like Devin McCourty, he's getting into the outer reaches of his prime. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. I think our offense is going to present a ton of matchup problems, and for that defense, and that's what Adam Gase is, especially in the red zone. A lot of it is matchups and getting the best matchup possible onto the field. So yeah, I agree with that. This comes from T-Zone. He says, "Hey Skaggs, thanks for bringing back the fan Q&A. I enjoy communicating with a fellow diehard Dolphins fan. Why is Mike Asiata like an afterthought? He was drafted to compete for a starting role, and I don't even think he is gonna make the team this year. And what a waste of a good value draft pick. Do you think he makes the 53-man roster?" Man, dude, we added Josh. He's gonna have to compete with Jesse, and again, Jesse is a young, surprisingly good player. He just is terrible in the running game. He cannot run block. He couldn't run block to save his life last year, and that was a huge issue. And that's something I'm assuming they're working on with him, and hopefully he improves on that. But he has to beat Jesse, and I don't think he is. Will he make the roster as a reserve? Probably, or he'll definitely. I think we'll try to keep him on the practice squad. We'll see how that pans out. But Mike, the only way Matt's beating out Jesse if he can sufficiently block in the passing game and be dominant in the running game. That's what he did at Utah. It was be a dominant run blocker and very powerful player. That's what he needs to do to win the job. Will he do that? Probably not. I'm hoping Jesse develops that part of his game, because I think Jesse is a tremendous pass blocker. So we'll see. This next question comes from Lou. Let's see here. He's asked a few questions. I'm going to pick one. Who's our number one receiver? Oh, man. You know what? Man, that is a tough question. I'll give you two answers to this question. I think DP can do it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the backs contribute a lot to the passing game this season. I really would not be surprised that a huge chunk of yardage might go to all three of those guys because of how good they are in the passing game, especially Kenyon and Kalen. I wouldn't be surprised if those two combined for 1,000 yards. I think people are sleeping on how good those two are in the passing game. So there's a shorter answer that kind of twists your question, but I do think the backs will contribute a ton to the passing game, and the numbers will look like a number one receiver, in my opinion. This question comes from Mac Moon, and he asked 3 different questions. Let me read them. Okay, let's do this one. If the run, and I'm sorry I'm not answering all 3, but we got it. There's a ton. You guys really did a good. I'm already wasting time, so I just want to get everybody's question. If the run defense is at the bottom half of the league and the Dolphins get the last wildcard spot, do you consider them a flawed team that still didn't improve and could lose in the first round of the playoffs? If the run defense is, let me read this again. If the run defense is at the bottom half of the league and the Dolphins get the last wildcard spot, do you consider them a flawed team that still did improve? No. If we made the playoffs, I think that would be a huge improvement. That would keep Adam Gase employed, obviously, which is a great thing because Adam Gase is a great coach and super well respected around the league, and I love him to death. And I think he's the best coach we've had since Shula, to be honest with you. And people would be like, oh, whatever. I really do believe that, and we just got to give him his. Listen, he's had 3 years. The second year to me does not count. So this is, and again, it is what it is. But I would not consider that a failure for that reason. Keeps Gase employed, keeps this train on the right track, and it keeps the fans happy. So I wouldn't consider it like a step back at all. But even if our run defense was bad, I wouldn't consider. Now, with that, obviously, we would have to do something about that. But I wouldn't consider that a failure. No. This next question comes from Matthew N. I don't know if that's your full name, but that's the only thing that's showing up on my thing. So Matthew N, who's a long-time listener of the show, and as is most of you are. Let's see, he asked multiple questions as well. Here's a good one. He asked a lot of questions. Try to keep, if you're one guy, and I'm not trying to, I don't care how many questions, I don't care. If you do, you do, I don't care. But as just a courtesy, just ask 3. At the very most, if you're an individual, ask 3. Because it's hard to scroll through. I'm trying to get everybody in this. He says, do you think Balaj will, this comes from Matthew in, again, he says, do you think Balaj will get a good number of touches this year? I think he will be good, he will do good things if he gets the ball. Rather give Balaj the carries than Gore. I somewhat agree with that. I'm not going to say I would rather give him to like it's a fate. Like I like Kalen more than Frank, but I do think Kalen. To your point, I do think Kalen needs his fair amount of touches. And I think we'll see if he deserves them in preseason, which makes it super exciting because there's a lot of good young players that I'm excited to watch this preseason. So yes, I do agree with that. I do think he does need his touches, and yes, he will do good things with the football. And I guarantee you he's gonna have some kick and punt return for touchdowns this upcoming season. And he's gonna have a great. I'm telling you, man. There's a lot of people with a lot of Balaj jerseys. Okay, so this next question comes from Corp Gamer Incorporated. It's Corp Gamer Inc. He asked multiple questions as well. Let's see here. He says, if we were to trade for a backup quarterback, would Teddy be our first option, or could AJ McCarron be an option? Because I've heard Nathan Peterman has been outplaying AJ. If I had to choose between the two, I would pick Teddy, because I still think Teddy has a lot of talent. And I've heard Teddy's actually outplayed Sam and Josh so far. And they said, I think the report said if he keeps it up, he could actually win the starting job. So AJ's a good backup as well, so I wouldn't be mad at either one of those things. But don't forget about David Fales. As much hate as I've gave him, he does have potential to be a very, very good backup in this league. I think there's something there from some of the things that I have looked at. And I've stepped back a little bit, and things you're hearing from him so far in OTAs. We'll see how he does in preseason. That's another thing I'm super. He had a tremendous. People forget he had a really, really good preseason, and he still has things he needs to improve on. But he has a lot of things he needs to improve on. But I think he has potential to be better than both of those guys. To be honest with you, maybe not Teddy, but definitely AJ. Definitely AJ. This next question comes from Mario. He says, I don't know if these questions were asked, but I'm going to ask anyway. Go ahead or go right ahead, Mario. He says, number 1, do you think Cameron Wake is a future Hall of Famer? Number 2, I'm going to answer individual. We'll go one by one here. Do you think Cameron Wake is a future Hall of Famer? This is a very loaded question. Yes, I do think he's a Hall of Famer. I think his prime, and again, this doesn't always. There's a lot of players that unfortunately are not in the Hall of Fame because of this. And and again, I'm going off a tangent here. The structure that we have right now for the Hall of Fame is terrible. I really do believe that you shouldn't have to wait 4 years. If you're good enough, you're good enough to get in. There shouldn't be a limit to how many players are in there. I just think it's kind of stupid. Yeah, I do think Cameron Wake is a Hall of Famer. I think he's a Hall of Fame caliber player because of the years he's dominated for such a long time. It's very rare that you have a football player dominate for that long a period of time. And he will be up there in the all-time sack list for sure. Number 2, if Ryan Tannehill was in the 2017-2018 season, how many games do you think we would have won? Do you think we would have made the playoffs? I think there would have been a lot less drama. There would have been a lot less setback. There would have been a lot less everything for that team to have to deal with, for sure. Yes, I do think that football team would have been in the playoffs. It's just so maybe Tannehill would have been able to keep Jay Ajayi together. Maybe he would have been able to really be the glue for that football team. If that would have been the case, then yes. But there was so much drama with that football team. We think about everything that happened. And you know what I'm talking about. There was just a lot of drama that season. Number 3 says, why aren't people talking about Kenyon Drake more? Again, it's just ignorance, dude. Not a lot of people like to watch the 2017 Dolphins. They had good reason to. We just were not a good football team last year, and everything Kenyon did was with that football team. So he'll get his due this upcoming season. 4 is what is one game you're going to see live this year? Oh, I don't know, man. I really can't answer that question. 5, what do you think will be our best game this year? I would have to have the schedule in front of me right now. I don't. I have a terrible memory, so I'm sorry I can't answer that one either. Thank you, Mario, though. Very, very good questions. Hang on just a sec. Oh, my thing is... Oh, here we go. This comes from B. Dennis. He says, if the Finns' defense performs horribly this year, God, I hope not. Do you think the Finns would fire Burke during this? Yes. If they did bad, Matt would be gone. I don't know, though. Gase doesn't seem that kind of a guy. I don't think Gase is that kind of a coach. I don't think he would be fired, no. I should take that back. I think he would ride it out with his guys. And I do think he has final say with that team, unless Stephen Ross came in and did something crazy. This comes from Mike GetSexy86. He says, "What do you think happens to Gase / Greer and Tannenbaum if we have a losing season? Also, who would you see us trading / cutting? I see. This is if we say, what do you think happens? I think Tannenbaum would be gone. Whether he resigns or not, I think he would resign. Greer, I think, would stay, and Gase, I think, would stay if we have a losing season. At least that's my hope, because I think those two have done their job well, very, very well. And again, it sucks because we have that 2017 season. If that didn't happen, this year would be less. It would be less difficult. If everything would have went smoothly last year, none of this would have ever have happened. And it sucks that that year had to happen, because it did kind of mess up a lot of different things. I really do believe Adam Gase is a great coach. I really do believe that. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the 2018 football team will be a very good team. And if we don't make the playoffs, again, I'll say it again, it's because we lose a lot of close games. And I think building off of that, whether it doesn't, there's a lot of moving parts. Tannehill is locked up in there as well. But if I had to say, if I was Stephen Ross, I think Tannehill, if we didn't have a successful season for whatever reason that is, Tannehill is more expendable than Gase is, in my opinion, because I think Adam Gase is a great head coach. Tannehill, on the other hand, I think he has more responsibility with what happens in that particular season. So, depending on how the team fails is where this question, how I would answer it. If the team loses a lot of close games, I don't think Tannehill, and we'd still have a good season, I don't think Tannehill will be our quarterback anymore. I think we will either trade up in the draft or do something crazy. If we have a straight-up losing season, I would not be surprised if Stephen Ross, like a bad season, I would not be surprised if Stephen Ross straight-up cleaned house. This next question comes from Tony. He says, who will be the best overall player and defensive player for the team this year, in your opinion? I think Tannehill will be the best offensive player. I think he's going to win comeback player of the year. I have a lot of faith in my dude, my dog, number 17. I think he's going to throw for 35 touchdowns. Mark my words, at least 30 plus. Defensive player, oh man, I think Minka. I really do. And I think a close second, Raekwon McMillan. I really do believe that. I don't know how to say your first name, dude. I mess up names all the time. I'm not messing this name up. I'm not looking stupid. I apologize, but his last name is Thompson. His first name is Jawhar, and I'm just gonna mispronounce it, and I don't want to sound like a stupid person. Anyway, he says, do you think that rotating our defensive line, especially the D tackles, too often can get us in trouble when we play good quarterbacks who can catch us with too many players on the field? That's a great question. That is a great question, dude. That is a great question. Man, depending on who we play. Obviously, we play A-Rod this year, and obviously we play Tom 2 times a year. But Tom's really not known for it. He does it, but he's not known for it. No, if we're coached right, it won't happen. If our team is all over the place, yeah. But if the coaches do their job right, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. This next question comes from Ronald. He says, Could you see a scenario where Devontae Parker loses his spot in the top 3 receivers this year? And if so, who do you think would beat him out? This is a great question, Ron. Where Devontae Parker loses his spot in the top, who would take him out? Isaiah Ford would have to be one. It would have to be either Drew Morgan or Isaiah Ford would move up in the depth chart, and it would have to. I don't know. The top 3 probably would look like Kenny Stills, Jakeem Grant, Danny. I guess Danny would be in there too. Man, that's a tough one. I think your top 3 would be Danny, Isaiah Ford, and Kenny Stills, and Jakeem Grant would be our gadget / big play guy. That's what I think the offense would look like, and the DP would, I guess, be the odd man out in that scenario for sure. But I don't think DP is going to be that. If you lost your question says if you lost the top 3 spot, I think the top 3 would be Danny, Kenny, and Isaiah, and then I think again your gadget guy would be Jakeem, and again, I don't think that's going to happen with DP. I just hope it doesn't happen. Again, who knows at this point with DP? But I do think the running backs will contribute a lot to the passing game this year. So I hope I answered your question the best I could, Ron. I didn't, but you know what I'm saying. Great question, though, Ron. Great question. Very tough question. Phil Osa. God, you told me how to pronounce your name before, and I can never get it right. You know what I'm talking about. Question regarding Kenny Drake. Again, long-time listener. And Ron as well. Ron is he's like since day one, really. Question regarding Kenny Drake. What are some reasons the national media does not give him any attention or respect? I just cannot fathom why after posting the numbers he did toward the end of the season and some of the performances he gave, that he would not be considered a top 5 in the NFL. I don't know if he's top 5 in the NFL because he hasn't done it long enough. And he didn't do it over a 16-game season, so I'm not going to go that far, but he's definitely... I think he will finish there. I think he has the talent to do that, and if everything goes well, he will. Because he has like that Marshall ability where he could go for 1,000. Like he has that kind of potential, and he's a smart player too, very competitive, and he's good in pass pro. I think he's improved that. He's got like jacked this offseason, so I think he's going to be better in pass pro too. Again, the reason why is just, well, dude, nobody wanted to watch our team last year, and I guess apparently a lot of people didn't watch a Monday Night Football game where we beat the Patriots, and he had like 200 total scrimmage yards or something crazy like that, and that was one heck of a game against the Patriots. I don't know, dude. It's just a lot of ignorance and a lot of lack of knowledge. Really, it's a lot of people who don't take the time. Again. It is what you and me know it because we watched our team last year. Again, just not a lot of people paying attention to the 2017 Dolphins. That's the easiest answer I can give you. But really, really good question. Who did that come from? George. I'm gonna call you George. Do you think? And again, I can read your name. I'm gonna sound like an idiot when I pronounce it. Tony says, do you think we can, and I don't know, anyway, do you think we can win the division this year, and why is everyone doubting us? Tannehill is better than, excuse me, let me redo the question, Tony. This comes from Tony. He says, do you think we can win the division this year, and why is everyone doubting us? Tannehill is better than given credit for. You're absolutely right, Tony. And again, it's just a lot of things that we've discussed this episode, a lot of ignorance. And it's not really ignorance, because ignorance isn't the right word. It's just not a lot of attention has been paid to us. Dude, you can't look at crap and Stephen A. Smith and some of those people, and even some analysts that played football formerly, because they just don't know, bro. They're out here looking at the Patriots. They're out here looking at the teams that everybody talks about all of the time. It is what it is. If we have a successful it doesn't matter what they think, number one, and we can prove them all wrong. But as soon as that happens, we will. Nobody talked about the Jaguars before this year. The only bad team that gets talked about a lot for some reason this offseason is the Cleveland Browns, because they made all these splash moves, in quotes. So it is what it is, dude. It means nothing. But I get it, and all of that will be fixed this season, and hopefully you get enough Dolphins content from it. But I get it, dude. I get it, bro. It's the story of my life. For the last every year. It's the story of my life. We just don't get enough national recognition. This question comes from Tony. Another Tony. He says, a different Tony. He says, where do you rank both our offense and defense among the rest of the league? Tony, that's a tough one. I think our offense has a chance to be a top 12 offense this year in total offense, and defense, same thing. I don't know if we'll be in the top 10. It depends on certain things, but I could totally see us being in the upper echelon. Definitely top 15, but definitely knocking on the door of top 10, if not in the top 10. This question comes from David McKay. He says, "Who do you think the Dolphins' starting depth chart will? The starting depth chart? Oh man, if we could, I'll run through the offense. I'll give you my starting 11 on offense really quick. Josh Sitton, Jesse Davis, Daniel Kilgore, Juwan James, Laramie Tunsil, Danny Amendola, Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, running backs Kenny Drake, Frank Gore, Kalen Ballage, starting quarterback Tannehill. The defense is a little bit harder, but that gives you an idea of what the offense will look like." This question comes from Dev Fire. He says, "How old are you?" You know what? Somewhere between. I don't know, man. I couldn't answer that one question for you. This next question comes from Ron. How old do you think I am? How about that? Let's see. Whoever gets closest, I'll say. He says, "Do you think Ted Larson gets a roster spot?" This is from Ron. Ron, I'll answer this one quickly. Do you think Ted Larson gets a roster spot, or do you think Asiata or Hillard can beat him out as the third guard in case of injury? Yeah, I would say there's a good chance that's going to happen. Asiata will beat him out. It's true. This question comes from God. He says, God. He says, "Do you think Isaiah Ford can be great like Rashad Matthews or maybe Marcus Colston?" I'm shouting it out first, so if it ever happens, maybe I could get to be famous. First of all, I said it first. Second of all, can he be like a Marcus Colston? Marcus Colston's borderline Hall of Famer. He's definitely one of the better Saints ever, so I don't know about that. Rashad Matthews, yeah, he could become a very productive role player for sure. This question comes from Winley. He says, "Name all the AFC teams that you think will make the playoffs this season." Dolphins, between the 6th and 4th seed, somewhere in there. Okay, Dolphins, Patriots, Ravens, Steelers, Raiders, Chargers, Jaguars. Game by game, how do you think we'll do against the AFC South and NFC North? Ooh, I think we'll do good against the AFC South. The only game I'm worried about is the Texans game. We always, for some reason, play them bad, and Bill O'Brien is their coach. AFC, and obviously luck can pull off miracles. NFC North is tough. They got a lot of good coaches. They got a lot of good just teams. So I think we'll have a better time with the AFC South for sure than the NFC North, because you got Matt Stafford, you got Kirk Cousins, you got Aaron Rodgers. All three of those guys have good teams, not to mention they're all three pretty dang good quarterbacks. Stewie Griffin says, "What rookie do you think will play the best this year and why?" Minka Fitzpatrick, by far. And why that is because I think he's a special talent. I think he's a special player. I think he has potential to be special all around. And when I say special, I mean it. I think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's just a special dude. He's special, man. You watch people, like, not only watching him play, which you can already tell he's special, hearing people talk about him, hearing Hall of Fame players say that they would have took him in the top 5, that's high praise. And that rarely happens, especially with a defensive player. To have that high of praise at the the defensive secondary as well. I'm gonna try to answer some questions that were asked twice really quick. I don't think we're almost out of time here, but we got questions for another one. B. Dennis says, how we made enough additions on offense to finally shake off the curse of us starting out slow week in and week out. That is a tremendous question. That has plagued us since Joe Philbin. Other than his first season here, that has plagued us. First. I think second we kind of struggled with that. I don't know, not really. Oh man, I don't know, cause I don't know really why. There's nothing really. I don't know. I couldn't really answer that question for you. As long as we win games, it doesn't matter. But I get what you're saying. That's a tough question to answer. I really don't have the explanation for that. I don't know if it's really, you can't really say it's a personnel problem, because it does that. How would you say that's a personnel problem? But I do think this team will be better. However that will happen, it just will be more productive. I can tell you that right now. But I don't know if that necessarily equates to faster starts. Man, let's see here. Let's see if we can't get another wrong question in here. He says, can you dig up more information on linebacker Terrence Garvin? And what do you think? Do you think he could beat out Alonzo for the lead? I don't think he can beat out Alonzo. I know very little about the kid, or the man. I don't know why I just called him a kid. The grown man. But I don't know enough. But I know Kiko. I know that Kiko can beat him out for sure. Do you think our defensive ends could benefit going to Von Miller's pass rushing camp? I don't know about that. Von seems like a fun-loving man. I don't know how serious he takes that. Who knows? I don't even know if that is for, maybe that's for kids. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about it. Alright, guys, that is your fan Q&A segment for this. That's your podcast for this week, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you go check out the channel and support it and spread the love, and I will see you guys in the next one.